Okay, now I've spent a lot of time burying Shayne Corson just now. And so I want to take a moment, and I do want to be fair about some of the things that were going on with Shayne Corson. When I'm saying that Shayne Corson made a lot of bad choices, he made a lot of selfish choices as an Oilers captain, you know, to a degree that is disparaging his character, or at least the character of the person that he was then. And one thing that I do think that we do have to take a moment to remember was something that we found out about Shayne Corson later in his career, and it was actually even after he had moved on from the Maple Leafs. And the thing that we learned about Shayne Corson was that, of course, Shayne Corson, he had his demons. You know, he had issues with his mental health. He battled depression. You know, he had substance abuse issues, probably not unrelated to his depression. So let's just take a moment to be fair to Shayne Corson and just acknowledge these things. I mean, yes, I did just spend a lot of time burying him, but I have no ill will towards him. I'd actually like to meet Shayne Corson. I'd like to talk to Shayne Corson sometime. It's probably not going to happen anytime soon. But I feel no personal animus towards Shayne Corson. I think that it would be a very strange thing to be holding a grudge against somebody that you've never even had the opportunity to meet. But really, one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to take this time to talk about Shayne Corson this week is because I wanted to kind of clarify something that I'm talking about when I talk about the state of the Oilers captaincy, when I ask these questions about it. You know, there tends to be a very pessimistic character to the Oilers fandom, one that I'm not always fond of. And so when people are raising these questions, a lot of people just assume that you're raising them in the worst possible way, and that you're basically calling for the player to be run out of town, which I think that anybody who calls for Connor McDavid to be run out of town in Edmonton is more likely to be run out of town themselves, and that is how it should be. But I suppose that the reason why I brought it up is because I wanted people to firmly understand is that, you know, I'm not trying to disparage Connor McDavid's leadership. I'm just trying to ask questions about whether there's a better approach that could benefit this team better, and I think that is a fair and reasonable and necessary question to ask, really at any given time with this team, with any team as a matter of fact. But I think that it was very important to just kind of take this moment that, you know, I mean, if you were to draw the conclusion that Connor McDavid is not a good captain for the Edmonton Oilers, which, by the way, is really not my opinion, but if you were to draw that conclusion, I think that it is very much impossible to ignore the fact that, you know, there has been much, much worse. There have been players that have been worse as captain. As a matter of fact, there have been players who have been much more costly to the Edmonton Oilers than Connor McDavid has been. Which, as that came out of my mouth just now, sounded like just such a wild thing to say because, I mean, let's face it, Connor McDavid, he really is one of the best things to happen to the Edmonton Oilers in a long time. And it's something that we can't afford to screw up, you know, by making bad decisions with the leadership group.